So have you had any coaching sessions like this before, or is this your first time?
Yeah, I talked to the guy last week, and he said I should focus on crosshair placement and focusing on like who has the peeker's advantage.
Okay. And you just been trying. You're just trying out a different coach, I guess, for the sake of it.
Oh
How
yeah,
come you
sure.
didn't go back to the same guy?
He's busy this weekend. I'll probably talk to him next week.
Okay, cool, cool. I see. Um, and what else? So what have you played before? What other FPS games have you played before Valorant?
Yeah, a lot of TF2. Played Overwatch. That was a waste of time.
Tell me about it. Okay, cool. So most
Quake.
recently,
Still play Quake
Overwatch.
Champions.
Was Overwatch the most recent thing that you played, or like do you play? How much do you play? I guess.
I usually like play Quake for an hour a day if I can find any games, which is not really happening nowadays.
Okay. Cool. So Quake's probably like your main go to at the moment.
Yeah, I never really played CS:GO. I really missed out. It's tactical shooters are pretty fun.
Okay, cool. I guess we can just hop straight in. So what kind of agents are your go tos?
I'm
I
just trying to
guess.
like play a different one every day. This was the first time I played Jet.
Okay, cool. Fair enough. So I guess my typical advice on that would tend to be to not swap around to agents, but I think it's whatever floats your boat. Mostly because you can oftentimes just make things more complicated than they need to be by trying to stick to the nuances of lots of different agents, and if you don't really understand what your main function is in the team or your goal, like what do you contribute to the team in terms of like your value, then
Right?
it can just make your life a little bit difficult if you're swapping from agent to agent, right?
I don't even remember to use their abilities most of the time.
Okay. in which case, yeah, you definitely want to be sticking to one agent might be a fair piece of advice. Because, like I said, if you're skipping from agent to agent, you're going to be missing out on a huge amount of value, and probably most of their value is in their abilities. So if you're finding that you're like just not using abilities, then maybe sticking to more like aim heavy agents, people like Jet or maybe Phoenix, where aim is probably the most important thing rather than actually using your abilities. But it does depend, of course, on your preference. Like, what do you enjoy playing? What's your kind of style? Which I guess we'll get to see very shortly.
Like, yeah,
Okay.
mostly I specialize in missing clutch shots.
Okay. So I guess the first thing I want to say, right, is like buying the sheriff in the first round is pretty unusual. It would be a very specific situation that you may want to buy a sheriff in the first round. I would not advise doing this at all. Jet has the amazing ability to be pretty effective at close range because she has an escape and in her E and her dash. So playing towards close range is going to be better for you. Sheriff is like a extreme long range pistol as far as the pistols go. It's also incredibly expensive, so you're going to use all 800 on simply just buying that gun, and it doesn't give you any advantage over say buying a ghost, which is also a one shot headshot at when people only have light armor. So you're essentially just
Okay.
over investing into something that doesn't give you any extra value. It's also a slower fire rate and a smaller magazine than having a ghost, right? So the ghost is just all round better because it's cheaper and it does everything that the sheriff can do in this particular round.
So what is
Um,
like the default strategy for a pistol round? Does everybody just buy one or two abilities in the classic pistol?
no. So most people will buy a ghost and a couple of abilities. It does depend on the agent you're playing. So with Jet, I think there's a bit more variety. Sometimes people buy a ghost. I think if you want to be like a more aggressive player, then people will buy light armor and a frenzy. That would be quite a typical buy on a Jet. It really
Which one
depends
is that?
on,
The machine pistol?
yeah, the frenzy's the machine pistol, yeah. So it kind of like I said, it depends on your preference. Like what do you want your play style to be? If you want to play a little bit further back and play a bit more passive, or if you want to play aggressively, then I think that the frenzy and armor strat is like incredibly strong. If you can pull it off, if you're comfortable playing with the frenzy, that is. But yeah, buying the sheriff straight off is generally not a great use of your money because it's just you're just missing out on value, right? Where you could just buy the ghost and then you could buy, say, a couple of smokes or something, right? Which automatically means that you can find more value somewhere. Does that make sense?
Right. I guess I just haven't really been thinking about what to buy when, like, at all.
Okay. So that's kind of, well, yeah, it doesn't necessarily have a huge amount of value. It doesn't necessarily make a huge difference at the start.
If I'm gonna stand here, would a sheriff be better? If I had a frenzy, I would be over by Sage.
Yeah. But having a ghost, which is the suppressed pistol, would be straight up just better than the sheriff, right? Because it can do everything the sheriff can do, but it's got a faster fire rate and it holds more bullets. And it's cheaper, so you would end up with money to buy something else, right? So essentially buying the sheriff, you should never buy the sheriff in a pistol round, basically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's more like for saving during an eco round?
It would be like in a force buy. Well, I guess an eco round, yes. If you had enough money left over, you then may buy. If the enemies are going to have a full buy, then you might buy the sheriff, yes. That's more the situation that it's applicable for. Because it can one-shot, headshot if they have full armor, which no one's going to have in the pistol round. So, is this unrated?
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know if you can hear the sound, but somebody made the call that they're all at B, so we all ran over.
Yes. Yeah, I mean they made that call based on seeing 2 people on the map, which is potentially fair. So okay, another thing we've really got to make a point of is using your dash like this is very, very inefficient. Using your dash your dash is typically going to be used as an escape. You don't want to be using it to close the gap unless you've got a shotgun and you're trying to like pull off some particular strategy just to catch them out, right? The only situation that I would say it's typically viable is if you've got a shorty and the opponent has a full rifle and you're just trying to get a kill in an eco round. Other than that, you tend not to want to use your E as an engaging tool. Mostly because you come around this corner with your gun down, right? You don't have your gun out. And so there's pretty much no excuse for the enemies here just to not just completely destroy you straight away.
No charges left.
Trev, come on, my guy. You got a clean shot.
Bad. One enemy remaining.
Good shit. I'll teleport it.
I might just follow her.
You should turn around. Oh my lord, yo.
You guys do something.
Okay.
30 seconds left.
So this is a good way to lose the pistol round. With your teammates just going through the teleporter and dying.
Oh yeah, that guy was like, I'm gonna follow her. And then 2 seconds later, he gets shot in the back of the head.
Okay, so in these situations, it's really important that you make sure that you and the Sage stay together. Because you really don't want him to be able to isolate a one-on-one with either of you. Nice shot though. Okay, so what are we going to buy into the second round? So given that you bought the sheriff into the first round, you could probably get away with just buying armor into this round, buying full armor and some utility. You probably don't necessarily have to buy yourself anything else. I probably would have, because you still have 2,500 left. You probably should have bought full armor here. It's likely just better for you. And the other thing, I guess, the other option you have. Sorry, let me just go back to where you buy. You do have another option. So this depends on your preference going forwards. If you want to save for an operator, then that's definitely an option here. And sticking with just light shields and the sheriff, or just heavy shields and the sheriff would be fine. Jet is, because of her mobility, typically a very strong agent to play with an operator. So because of your E, because of your being able to like just move yourself from one position very quickly, playing with the operator is great because it allows you to take aggressive peeks and then use your E to escape, right? So your options here in terms of buying are like, you could save for the op, right? Or you could actually, another thing that a lot of people do, given that you have 3,500, you could just buy light shields and buy a phantom or a vandal. And this is great for your economy because it means you're going to go into the round after this with a rifle.
If I live, you mean?
If you live, yes. But if you die, then you give a rifle to your teammate and they can just give it back to you the next round. Assuming that you win the round, right?
If they live, yeah.
But
So like if you had an op with Jet, where would you stand and where would you escape to? In the B site here.
probably peek B long. So go for a peek something like this and then dash back across that line. That would be the position that I would typically go to. You can do exactly the same thing out of mid. So you can go for the push through hooker, peek into mid, and then look down this sideline. Sorry, can you see the map? It's not. I realize it's not particularly clear. You've got your map very small.
I thought B long was that part in like the top right.
Yeah, so this is B long.
Oh, okay.
This particular straight here is B long. And then this is mid. Some people might call it B mid. Then there's A short, and then there's just showers. This doesn't really have a call out.
Well, in low gains, it's just mid A and B.
Okay, well, generally this is called B long anyway.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be the peak that I would go for. Peeking across like this, and then looking down this sight line. And if you need to dash back, then you just dash back towards garden. Or you can peek mid, right? You like mix it up, you know? There's no reason to do one set thing. But the kind of strategy that you've gone for here in terms of buying all the utility and just light armor is what you would probably do if you're going to save for an operator into the next round. So first things first, there's pretty much no point being on point here because the enemies simply aren't going to be here, right? There's pretty much no. Sorry.
Why is that?
Because they can't be here. It's 1 minute 30. It's going to take them at least 20 seconds to walk down this straight and to get here, right? If you're going to play like a passive setup at this point, it's fine, right? But it's probably not the play when you're playing with a pistol to try and take a long range duel. Because if they force bought here, then you're going to be at some sort of disadvantage, right? And on top of that, the most important thing here is that you want to find early information, right? And given that Jet is an entry, right? Meaning that you typically want to be aggressive and try and get like the first kill, or that's what people call an entry. Then you don't want to be playing a passive position because it doesn't enable you to do that, right? And to fulfill your role as playing Jet as an agent in this team, right? Jet is very much an aggressive agent looking to try and get kills, and her kit enables her to do that, right? Specifically your E, which is your escape. So even though, like, I would probably be taking exactly the same peek that I said that I would with an operator right now with the sheriff. So I'd be going towards
further back.
So I'd be standing
Around...
like here, and I'd peek out that way, and I would look down long.
Okay.
Because why not do that? Right? If there's an enemy there, you dash back and you can fall back to this position. That's fine, right? Where you're playing isn't like inherently bad, but you're missing out on finding that information at the start of the round, right? And if you get that information at the start of the round, imagine if you peek out here, you get a kill, you see that there's 3 guys. Okay, 1, you've got a kill, that's great, and you did that early in the round. 2, you've got the information that there's 2 more people there. And even if you don't get the kill, that's information that there's 3 people on that part of the map, which is really, really important, right? Information in tactical shooters is the most important resource in the game. The most important thing to have is information. Everything is made off of information. What plays you're going to make, where you're going to go, everything plays off of the information that you have in this game. And so by playing backside, you physically can't get any information from here until they walk all the way up, right? And by that point, they can just say, okay, we're just going to execute onto B. Whereas if you play forwards and you peek this angle, One, you got the chance of getting the kill, and two, if you do get information and you see people, that's going to give your team a chance to rotate, right?
Interesting. So
and
where
that
would
way
you
you-
where would you be on
Sorry.
where would
go
you be
ahead.
on A? Would you be like watching the showers?
Yeah, so typically people would push into showers and they would play pretty much. Oh my lord, I'm gonna try small.
Then you peek like the A spawn, whatever you call it, A
Yeah,
short.
so they'd play approximately on that X and they would look through like that. And check towards in front of showers. That would be quite typical. On A, people don't necessarily peek. I guess the only peek that you typically make is people will make a peek from short, and they'll see if there's anyone at the bottom of short. That would be quite normal.
Why is that? Because you don't gather as much information because the distance is shorter?
What, as in compared to showers?
As compared to like peeking B long, you can see a huge distance.
Sorry, I don't follow. You mean, why would I peek A short as opposed to B long?
Yeah.
I mean, there will be people playing B and there'll be people playing A, so I wouldn't say that it's like a direct comparison like that. Because I think you'd probably peek both. You would have someone on B peeking B long and someone on A peeking A short.
What about the middle? How much emphasis do you put on controlling the center of the map?
It depends. So a lot of this stuff depends is the answer, right? It depends on what your team wants to do. Because, for instance, you could play for heavy showers control, or you could play for heavy mid control, for instance, right? In which case you would be peeking mid rather than peeking B long. There's no inherent advantages, disadvantages. Well, there are inherent disadvantages and advantages to both of them. It just depends on your preference, how you want to use your utility. There's an option to do both, but by playing back on site, you don't have the option to make any of those plays, right? So you can't find that early information, which would then allow your team to rotate and give you some sort of advantage, some sort of read on what the enemies are trying to do, right? Because you don't want them to, say, all walk up B long and just execute onto B site. Because if they do that, they're going to have a massive man advantage. They're going to get the bomb down, and suddenly it's a retake situation for your team, which is disadvantageous to you.
You're saying like no matter which map it is, when you're on defense, you should be like at the blue line, trying to watch an angle for the enemies approaching.
Pretty much, yes. It can depend on the agent you're playing. If you're playing like Cypher, you might not do that. You might just play really passive. But you should still be looking for some sort of information, yeah. So at this point, this has happened. We see our omens behind. There's pretty much no point shift walking here because there's no way that anyone could hear you. But at this point, we know that all the enemies must be, well, either here or here, right? Just by looking at the map.
Okay.
They could still be on B long, I guess, but it's unlikely.
One enemy remaining.
Especially in like kind of lower elo games or maybe like less experienced games, most of the time it's just going to be like they're just going to stack up and go together to one part of the map.
Yep, every time.
Which is terrible, but like that's what inexperienced players do.
It was great knowing you all. Also, delete my hard drive.
So okay, so we're going to go with the Phantom. Like I said, playing Operator with Jet is like probably quite favorable for you. But buying a Phantom or a Vandal is absolutely fine. Completely dependent on your preference.
What do I do when I see like my whole team is all five stacking up on the same angle? Should I talk to them or just go flank?
In what? I guess it depends on the situation. Do you mean if they're all like? You mean on attack? When you're on attack, if you're all pushing towards one
When
side.
you're attacking, the whole team will like automatically, all five go showers and they'll all try to peek the same angle at the same time.
Yeah. So
They
yes,
all get caught in the same
I
grenade
would
and die.
completely avoid doing that. Yes, if you see your whole team doing that, I would go somewhere else. Yeah, 100%. I might even say, oh, yo, can blah, blah, blah come with me, right? Like, oh, Omen, can you come short with me? And then the other three can go showers, for instance, if you're going to go for an A hit.
Some are at A.
So do those smokes that he put down help us, or do they help the attackers?
Probably help the attackers more than anything because they're now able to walk up B long for free. The one in mid is okay, but not great. Mostly because it doesn't actually cover mid and they can completely see. So you notice that there's a massive gap towards the right hand side of it. So they can just see through that gap anyway. Okay, so this is a really important piece of information that we should definitely be handing off to our team, that we have the spike. We don't have to control A site if we've got the spike. Because they physically can't win, they can't plant without the spike, right? So we just need to get our whole team stacked up on the spike and then we win.
Well, we tried to tell them, but...
When you guys can rotate from A, spikes at B.
Alright, so we know Reyna is coming around the corner.
Okay, one thing though, this is... We make this same mistake here of dashing across. What does this achieve?
I thought
what is
somebody
this?
was watching that.
Okay, but if someone's watching it, why can't you just peek it and then dash back?
I don't know.
Yeah, so in this situation, like, that's pretty much the play that you want to make, is you want to peek onto, like, if you want to check it, then peek onto the angle. But dashing across here doesn't achieve anything for you, and your dash, as I've said, is like pretty much like the crux of your kit. It is like the most essential piece of everything you do as Jet. It's all about using that to escape, so you can get multiple kills, right? That's kind of the whole principle, is that you can like shoot, dash out, okay, and then I'm going to shoot again, right? And that means you can get 2 kills. The enemies aren't able to trade you, right? That's kind of the whole principle that you operate on.
When you guys can rotate from A, spikes at B.
Spike here, spike.
Spike here.
Okay, so we make the call on the spike, and they do rotate.
Yeah, fuck those guys.
Fuck.
Okay, the only thing that I guess you have to think about here is we talked about you mentioned crosshair placement. Do you think that, sorry, it's really unfortunate this is a Twitch VOD, but do you think that your crosshair placement here is good? I'll just like draw your approximate crosshair on.
Well, it would be good if before the teammates came out, but now I know they're covering that, so I should probably be looking at the window.
You think that even if the team... Okay, so that is...
Well, we thought that Reyna was there, right? That the evil eye came out, so she's standing right there ready to kill us,
But where
right?
should your crosshair placement be if she's going to come through here?
Well, it
where are
depends
you
if she's going to
first-
be walking or running, but it should be at head height.
Yeah,
Getting, I don't know, a centimeter from the wall.
pretty much. And our crosshair isn't there right now, right? I think you're pretty much spot on. I mean, like, basically here. Something like there, right? Somewhere in that space, anyway. Up against the wall where you're first going to see her, and at head height. Whereas your current crosshair placement doesn't do that at all, right? It's in the middle of Narnia, and it's aimed probably at her feet. Do you see what I'm getting at? So
yeah,
it needs to be higher.
Around the wall, it would
and
be at chest height,
yeah, I mean, maybe it's a chest height, right? But it's
so it should be higher.
it should be higher, and it should be closer to the wall, right? Because you're first going to see her in this position, and you want it higher because you want to hit her head.
Yeah, fuck
Right, and here, it's just like, it's just pointless, right? There's no point in our crosshair being there.
those guys. Sorry.
Fuck. Behind. Yo, move your asses.
For you.
Jeez.
Okay. And your teammate is obviously super satisfied about what's going on there.
Good shit.
I second on.
Calling.
Let's get on to the next round.
Life.
So should I have been crouching somewhere else where I couldn't be seen from the window, like to that place to the left, maybe?
No, I don't think so.
One enemy
You've just not missed him twice?
I think the position that you had was fine. You should, yeah, if you'd had your crosshair in the right place, if you were holding window, then that would have been better. It would have probably been better that you weren't in. It's difficult because there's too much hindsight involved. I think the only thing, like, the position that you were in is fine, but you probably had to be watching window, right? I think that's the only difference, is that your crosshair should have been on window. Because we could have expected.
Where did Reyna go that round? We saw the evil eye come in. And then
She was
the
still
team
mid.
came to the teleporter and she disappeared.
She was still mid. Your team didn't peek. They were still in the teleporter.
I will
Oh,
kill
God damn
you,
it.
Omen.
Right, so here we now know that I should have been peeking B long there.
Yep. I mean, you could peek mid. Like I said, it would be fine to push mid with your Omen. Like, it's the same principle. It's just about taking a position on the map and trying to find some information, right? I mean, you don't, like, your Omen, you don't necessarily even have to push, right? You just have to peek, and look for information, right? The information is the most important thing here. Your Omen happens to get an entry kill, which is quite nice.
Yeah, it's usually pretty useless.
I want to be careful with our crosshair placement here as well. It's still a tad low, right? Even if they come around this corner, this is definitely not going to be a head height, right?
What do you think, B or A?
Yep. There's one more in hookah.
Now we know he's there. What do you do now?
Now that I know that he's hooker, I guess okay. Let's watch
I
this
can
all
just
again.
die for free.
Enemy spotted.
What do you think, B or A?
So at this point, I wouldn't be trying to challenge him. Moving to this position is risky because he has this angle on you, where he's actually holding from. So he should have an opportunity to win this battle against you here. You see that the spike goes down. I don't think we need to challenge. I don't think there's any reason for us to go for this jump here. And on top of that, you've got to realize that when you're in the air, you're not accurate. So if you jump up like that, the enemies can spray you and you basically can't shoot them. You're basically just like jumping up in the air here saying, here, take a few shots at me for free. Because I can't reply. Because if you're in the air, you're not accurate.
Okay.
So I think when you see the spike drop, I think that's fine. But I think at this point here, you should be looking this way. We should be looking back towards B long. Sorry, my arrows are terrible. Back towards B long. Because we only
Why is that?
need
Didn't we just checked it and it was empty, right?
Yeah, okay, sure, but the reason why, let me explain what the play I'd be making here. Mostly because you're only exposed to this angle, and if you go back towards your right, you're only exposed to long. And just because you checked it 5-10 seconds ago doesn't mean that someone's not walked towards it and walked down it, which they have done. We know that because of what happens next, right? And given that they've seen you making this kill, the chances are is they're probably going to try and peek as quickly as possible, right? Because they're going to try and frag. They're going to try and refrag, sorry, and get the trade kill. So straight away, I'd be looking the other way because I know that I'm exposed to that angle. And again, I wouldn't be re-peeking this. There's no need to. You only need to stop them getting the bomb onto site, and you can do that completely safely from garden, pretty much, or from any other angle. And here, when we peek, we should be aware that someone could be in this position, and you want to peek it much more decisively than this. And I guess, as always, a bit of recoil training would never be a problem.
I should have been aiming lower.
Sorry, yeah. Look at where your bullets go. All your bullets are going over the top of his head.
Zimmer.
Nice job.
So you understand that like your bullets don't go where your crosshair is, right?
Yeah.
So that like you have to pull. Yeah, I'm just saying like you might have not known that. I wasn't trying to presume. So you have to like physically have your crosshair below where you want it to be if you're spraying. And there are things in the game that will enable you to practice this in the practice range. That will give the opportunity to practice spraying like that. So you can get used to what the recoil patterns look like.
Last player standing.
And it's one of those things that like I would very much advise doing if you're like having not played a strategic shooter before like this, where the recoils are typically like this. It's well worth going and practicing those things because they're very much fundamental to playing your game, right?
How often do you like rock and roll as opposed to firing short bursts?
His crosshair is scared and that fucking.
As in how often do you like spray?
Yeah, is it like a range thing? How close you
Yeah,
are?
it's typically a range thing. Yeah, so but regardless, you still need to have good recoil control because if you're firing like 3 or 4 short bursts, you still need to have some recoil control because they aren't all perfectly accurate. It's still like a little like that. I mean, it's only a small amount, but you want to be able to like make that accurate.
The original or the new one?
The original and the new one.
Okay, so we're on an eco round now, right? Because we've lost 2 rounds in a row.
Hold
I
that
guess.
ground.
Oh no, he's buying.
Well, I don't think eco rounds exist in unrated, but
Okay, that's fair.
theoretically, yeah.
That's a fair point. Theoretically, we should be on an eco round though, yeah. So again, at this point, I'd say that we're not really contributing anything by just hiding in this corner, right? It's well worth looking for the info. And chances are, given that we've seen the Reyna, I mean, you could certainly base on the assumption that like these guys aren't hugely experienced, that if you see one person on one side of the map, chances are the vast majority of the team is there.
Not to mention that if they win a point the first 5 rounds, they're probably going to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the key, really, is that you can notice the pattern, that they're doing exactly the same thing every time. They're just 5-manning to one site. So chances are they're all towards A. So again, we could be taking the flank already, right? We could already be down here trying to get around behind them, which would be great if we got that flank on, right? Or we start rotating to A. One or the other. It doesn't really matter, but there's kind of no point us being here, right?
Where do you think you teleported to our spawn?
Probably your spawn, yeah. No, there you go, heaven. Teleported to A heaven.
The guy who can globally
But you see, at this point, like, we could have had that read on them, but our whole team's dead now, and we haven't rotated.
Right.
And we could have won. Like, if you just peeked B long and you could see there was no one there, you could have pushed down B long and saw there was no one in front of B, and then you could be like, it's A, 100%. And then you can just get your flank on, right? And get behind them as quickly as possible. Or you can check B long, your Omen's checked B mid, and you're like, okay, well, look, no one's there. Let's go to A. And again, like you've already said, they 5-manned to a site every time. We saw the Reyna flash come out on A. Chances are that they're going to 5-man towards A anyway, right? So that's even more of a reason to be pushing aggressively.
Last player standing.
Yo, headshots. What is this game? Hit registration.
One more thing, like this is
counter strafe there and
yeah.
counter strafe and failing.
Well, I mean, so
Last player standing.
Yo, headshots. What is this game? Hit registration.
you don't even need to move when you're shooting that guy. But the bigger thing that I wanted to make is about how you peek onto this angle. You have no idea where any of them are. And typically the best way to peek these angles is to stutter step. And what I mean by that is peek, and then at the apex you're looking and then you're walking back, right? So you kind of like zigzag your way out, something like this. Does that make sense? And the reason that we do...
At running speed?
Yeah, I mean, you're not holding shift while you do it. So you just like step out, look, walk back, step out, look, walk out. And you basically progressively get further out and check each position. And so this is what we call, or one way to describe this would be slicing the pie. So you check each angle one by one. So first we check this angle. So we peek out and then we counter strafe and we check this particular, we check this first spot. We peek out, we counter strafe, we check the left side of this. Then we check the right side, then we check triple boxes, right? And you essentially, so this is what people call slicing the pie, where we slice it into individual peaks that we can make, and we do each one by one. And this, the movement on the floor looks something like this, right? As you check each one, because you get out the line of sight onto each position. I realize this is a terrible drawing, but I hope you understand what I mean.
Yeah, so I see the pros, they'll like pre-fire all the angles, or does that give away your position?
I mean, don't necessarily need to pre-fire them, but peeking onto each position deliberately one by one is definitely something you want to be doing, rather than the way that we peek this, right, where you just kind of walk out. You just like continuously clear the whole thing like this, right, rather than checking each position one by one and then going to pick up the gun. Does that make sense?
So the assumption is like somebody's camping somewhere and watching heaven, and then if I just
Precisely.
slowly walk out, I'll die?
Yes, you just basically have to assume that there's someone at each position. And if you're slow walking out, anyone at any 4 of these positions could just kill you, right? Because they're just holding the angle. Whereas if you check each one individually, you have peeker's advantage. So just based on latency, you're going to see them first. And 2, if you're doing it deliberately, you're already in your mind thinking there's someone at this position. So your crosshairs are already in the right place. And if you do see someone with your peeker's advantage, you tend to win that duel. Whereas if you just flop out, you expose yourself to all 4 of these at once, you have to adjust, you have to stop moving. It becomes much more complicated, right? Because you have to do a lot of different things at the same time. you have to counter strafe, you have to adjust your aim to the correct position, and so on and so forth, right? Rather than deliberately peeking onto each position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. And it's that like general mechanic you can put, you can apply to any time that you're peeking an angle. How are we doing? Okay, I'm going to skip to attack because I want to make sure that you get a chance to have some feedback on both halves. Because otherwise we're not going to make it to an attack.
So when do you use Jet's ultimate as opposed to just shooting people?
If you're playing with an operator,
Switching sides.
then if you're getting in a situation where they're like, you're likely to come into close range, like you're having to clear something maybe, then that would be the kind of time that you would use your ult. If you have
Like an
knowledge
emergency
of,
shotgun?
you kind of, yeah, I guess. Well, it's like having an emergency assault rifle more than a shotgun, because it's incredibly powerful. And typically using the right click, it's a little bit risky, particularly if you're not super duper accurate.
You all. Also, delete my hard drive.
She talks so much while the player doesn't.
Yeah, how do you
Okay.
make...
So we kind of talked about this a little bit, right? That, okay, one, buying the sheriff is not great, and two, we don't all want to go to the same spot.
People always like
It's like a bunch of baby ducks following the mother.
Yeah, yeah, sheep. It's just a herd of sheep.
So I started
Okay.
going there, so I just fuck off and go somewhere else.
I mean, going for the play that you did is fine, but again, we have to talk about how we peak this, right? We should clear position, right? We should deliberately peek onto each angle one by one. We should slice the pie, right? So we should always be slicing the pie when we're making these peaks happen, right? So check this position, check the position of the box, check.
So where on the minimap would they be standing?
Well, I'm
think
just gonna see if you peek out a little bit more.
Headshot.
Okay, maybe we're not gonna get to see it. It's much easier to show you. When
I'll use the
when we
dash as
actually
an
peek out,
escape there.
but- Yeah, that was nice. That I can commend you for. But yeah, so we've got to be deliberate with our peaks, right? So let me. So typically, check on top of the box. One. Check stood at the box, holding the angle. And then the wall that would be over here. Check that position. And then as you walk up, then you should check the close corner in here. And basically clear every single position. And I guess a lot of this comes down to map knowledge. Well, no. Knowing the positions does, but like regardless, if you don't know the positions, you should still be stutter stepping. You just won't be quite as precise with it.
Okay.
Because you want to expose yourself as little as possible. Yeah, using your dash to escape there was great, and this is pretty much exactly how you want to use it, right? You can, if you don't win the duel, but you've got the info, it's fine, right?
You're the team captain, man. And we're not using the info though. We're just standing around.
Yeah, sure. That's true.
There's more than one
But you could
person.
definitely give the info, like they've rotated to B at this point. So going to A is probably a really smart call here.
Heal me, please.
So at this point, I'd probably be calling for your teammates to TP.
I think they might actually do it.
Thank you. Take teleporter.
Yeah, should have gone that.
Shut the fuck up.
So there you would have been like stutter stepping the angle there.
Alright.
Shut the fuck up.
At this point, like here, I would be stutter stepping to go out to clear it. So to clear this position.
Shut the
And what
fuck
about inside the
up.
hookah area there? Would
Same
you even
thing.
go in there?
Alright,
I mean, if they're going to go to A, I wouldn't
Yeah,
know.
I
I think staying where you are is fine, because you can catch them on the rotate.
think they're covering it though.
If they're going to TP to A, that is, right? Because there's no reason to risk peeking.
Let's sit in teleporter.
30 seconds left.
Go, go, we have to go, we have to go. Killjoy, go, go!
Killjoy, go!
Press forward.
Good job, Ray.
Oh, hey, 4G, press 4G.
Killjoy.
Okay.
With what I'm doing there, maybe I thought I would catch somebody
Your own
rotating.
teammate, you dick.
Dude, this report is
I'm
solid.
recording him.
Or it's at least one of us.
So I don't know if this Killjoy's trolling or he's probably very, very, very new to the game.
Oh, he might be trolling a little bit. We were abusing him all game.
Yeah.
I mean, any
Okay, sorry. So what do we buy into this? So we lost the pistol. And now we're force buying into the second round. So this is, again, another one of those situations where you have to look at the example of the low elo players, where this is typically what happens, is where you just auto force buy into second round, which is exactly what you must not do.
In every round?
Well, they'll force buy repeatedly, yes, but the most impactful time that it's really an issue is in the second round. So if you lose the first round, unless you're like full force buying into the second round with the strategy in mind, then buying into the second round is probably not a particularly smart choice. Because if you buy into the second round, then you can't full buy into the third round. Meaning that you can't get full set of rifles into the third round because of the way that the economy works. Chances are they're also going to have like a gun advantage in this round, so
any round.
buying stuff here is just kind of pointless. But it looks like our team's gone for like a full force buy.
I see they've got the SMGs. You're saying we should just have like pistols, light armor, and abilities?
But not even as much as that. Literally just nothing. I wouldn't buy anything into this round, usually. Maybe a single smoke. As Jet, probably wouldn't buy anything at all.
Cover land. Hey, Sage, you have
You're
your
saying I
wall?
shouldn't be walking when I'm peeking that? Should be like running?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it running. Yes, but yes, running, if that's how you want to
Yeah,
describe
Omen
it,
blind,
yes.
Omen smoke.
You shouldn't be shift walking, no. Essentially, you walk out, and at the apex of your counter strafe, you then shoot. So at this point, right? Because if you'd be counter strafing, then at this point is when you shoot, because you're stationary, right? When you press the counter strafe, and then your bullet is completely accurate because the game sees you as not moving, right? So you can peek out, counter strafe, shoot, go back.
Already blinded, sorry.
By the way, is there a slight delay when you counter strafe, or is it, do you press the D and then click the button at the same time?
She's so low.
Very,
Behind,
very
behind.
slight delay. Well, there's an easy way to test it. I actually wouldn't really say there's a noticeable delay.
Player standing.
The easy way to test it is just to go and practice it in the in
Yeah,
the
I've done
practice
that, but
range, right?
I'm still not 100% sure.
We have to box. Can't save.
Well, I'll keep working on it.
Look at this kid. Like, what the fuck?
What are you
I'm so pushing.
Okay, so we're back up on guns.
Turret out.
We have to push this shit. Just go.
So, okay, notice our crosshair placement here as we peek this, and two, how decisive we are at peeking this, right?
Area's down.
You notice you just kind of like slow walk around the corner like that. Whereas what you want to do is you want to strafe onto the angle like that. And then counter strafe, and at the counter strafe, well, you don't even necessarily have to counter strafe backwards. You literally just have to walk out, press counter strafe, stop at this position, and shoot. Right? And then we can, as well, slice the pie. So we deliberately, we know what angles they could be holding here, right? The position that they're at right now. And we can simply strafe onto this angle and shoot this guy straight away, right? Because this is a very
especially if I knew
predictable
there was a
position.
gap there, that would have been a good play.
I see. Did you not? You didn't realize that there was a gap in your smoke?
Turret
No.
out.
We have to
Oh.
push this shit. Just go.
I see. Because there's a pretty
Did I have thrown the
humongous
smoke
gap.
there to come in?
No, I wouldn't bother throwing the smoke at all. I think the smoke is pretty questionable unless you're worried about them pushing
So what's
this
the
way.
use of this?
Unless you're worried
Do you,
about them
like-
making this push, I wouldn't bother.
What is the use of the smoke then?
Mostly to cross positions. So, for instance, if you were coming out garden, you could maybe throw a smoke to elbow. You see on the map where I put the circle is where you could smoke if you're pushing towards site from garden. If you're trying to make that cross, you might put a smoke down there. Or maybe when you're in window,
What purpose would that have?
it would mean that you wouldn't have to check elbow. Because if someone's then stood in elbow, you then don't have to worry about them, or at least momentarily don't have to worry about them because they have to push through the smoke. So you can clear a bit deeper, and then someone else can hold elbow.
Okay, so you like close off one avenue for the defenders.
That's the idea, right? It's to deny one angle, so you only have to peek another one, because otherwise you have to peek into a crossfire, right? You have to peek into an enemy on your left and an enemy on your right, and you physically can't duel if you're in the middle of two enemies, right? You can only fight with one of them. So you'd use your smokes to deny an angle for one or the other of those enemies. And that's what the jet smokes. You'd use the jet smokes for exactly that, to deny them one sight line. Okay, so this comes back to slicing the pie and like peeking properly, right? Did the other coach like show you how to peek properly? Like take you into like just like show you the screen, show you how to do it?
Yeah, just covered a lot of material.
Okay.
Before this, I wasn't even placing my crosshair in the right area, so I've already made some progress.
Okay.
Wind, show me where to go.
Fuck! He got the spike, yo.
I tried.
Yeah, fucking surrender, bro. This shit, yeah, you can't even.
This shit's gay. I'm out. Sorry, boys.
Yeah, sure, whatever you say.
Don't leave, don't get banned, but.
This game has such a great community, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I actually think that in the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad in Valorant.
No.
I've met a lot of friendly people as long as you don't have a voice that sounds like you might be a woman or a child or a foreigner.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's accurate. By the way, you're drawing. I don't know if you realized that.
All right. Push the talk key.
Ah.
Walk.
Okay, crosshair placement again, right? Our crosshair is looking at the floor. It should always be at head height.
One shot, bitch.
Be there, I should be.
And it should be probably up against this wall, right? Sorry, up against this wall. So here.
So what's the plan if all four of us are going to rush A? Where should I drop a smoke?
I mean, your omen should be
Curve
throwing
it
the
around
smokes.
there.
So you probably don't really need to do it. Like, you should hope that your omen's going to do... Let's see, it depends where your omen smokes.
Okay, so we blocked off heaven, that's good.
So that's great. Those smokes are probably fine. Although I wouldn't push through them. So you could put a smoke here and a smoke here, and that would mean that you can... This is exactly what we're talking about, right? Where there could be, say, let's say there's an enemy in lamps, right? And so they're looking this way, and you've got the guy that's in the corner over here that just killed your teammate, and he's looking this way. This is what a crossfire is, right? Where you're having to come into two angles. So
I was
you can...
trying to block off that area there, but I kind of missed.
What, you mean this? You're trying to block the entrance, this entrance?
Yeah, so I could go through the smoke and just engage one side.
Okay, so you definitely don't want to do that. You never want to be walking through a smoke if you can avoid it. It gives you a pretty big disadvantage to walk through a smoke. So so like I said, in this particular situation, there's a guy that could be lamps, and there's a guy shooting from this angle, right? They're shooting on these crossfires, these angles. Putting a smoke here and a smoke here would be great because it denies the sightlines to this guy on the left, right? Because he can't then see through here.
And then we just go around the corner and jiggle peek that guy.
And kill this guy. Exactly. Yes, that's the whole idea. Precisely.
One's already blocked off there.
Yeah, and that's perfect. And you've also got Omen Flash to do that, right? Your Omen could just stand here and throw his flash through the smoke. Through the wall, sorry. And that would make that pretty easy. And then, yeah, dashing into these smokes is probably not ideal. It's probably better to, once they get this kill, dash this way. And then you can play at triple boxes and use that as your hard cover. So I'd be dashing to this position.
So you just
here.
like calmly walk around the right side there?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you just peek it, right? You walk up to that hard cover, this position, this X, and then you peek to the right and look this way, right? And you just know what the angle is. Put your crosshair in the right place and peek it. And if anyone's trying to come through CT, then they don't necessarily know exactly what you're going to peek from, right?
One enemy remaining.
And you get very fortunate pushing through there.
Here's the deal.
Right here.
So how the recoil accidentally hit him in the head.
It happens.
The enemy stage will heal me.
Maybe.
Alright, so we got the site for the first time all game.
is she?
So this is again like this just like I guess shows your
Fuck is she?
lack
How do
of
we set
practice
up
on
here?
this. I mean, so being in heaven is fine, and if you're worried about her coming from this position, then this is okay. And you see that she's lamps, so you're gonna have to move in a minute. But she could have been coming from CT, so the position that you're at is great. Just be careful again that we really must be peeking this
Like
decisively.
pretend there are 3 enemies alive and not just one. How would you do it?
Fuck is
Then
she?
I would hold the angle that you're about to hold. I'd have my crosshair here and hold this position. I think that's fine. I would hold that first, and then I would fall back, or play in the corner. I think that's a pretty good play, and the position that
Just
you
gather
got is pretty
information like
good.
the start of the round because we've switched to defenders now.
No, you are trying to get a kill, but you're trying to slow them down. So getting the first kill and then making it hard for them to push because they expect you to still be at this position, right? If you're holding this and you get the first kill as they come around this corner, that's great, right? And then at that point, you can just chill in this corner on the left here. You don't then have to do anything, or you can just fall back and you can drop out of heaven, and that's also okay. It's just about slowing them down at that point because you don't want them to defuse the bomb. But the point that I really wanted to make about this is notice how you peek this. Again, you just kind of flop onto the angle, and you don't have your crosshair where you want it to be before you peek. So what you really want to be doing before you peek is you want to say put your crosshair wants to be here,
Fuck is she?
and then as you peek out, your crosshair will already be in the right position once you come out of the cover. It's really important that your
It should be,
crosshair,
like right around there.
basically, yeah. And then so essentially your crosshair is like here, and you're stood behind the hard cover, right? So you're stood like here, and then
Can
you
you
peek
move
out,
like that much?
and then you're stood here, and then your crosshair is like here. That kind of idea. Maybe this isn't like directly proportional to exactly how it's going to play out, right? But you stand in a position and you have your crosshair aimed at a position, and then you strafe, you're stood in this position, and then your crosshair is on whatever position you actually want to be looking at. Is that kind of clear, that the idea?
Right?
That essentially you put your crosshair where you want it to be before you peek, and then you peek and your crosshair is exactly where you want it to be. So you don't have to move your crosshair once you've peeked. So you don't have to adjust, right? And that way you can react a lot quicker.
well enough.
Sorry?
Guess I don't know all the maps well enough to know where my crosshair should be.
Yeah, I mean, okay, fine, but you can be a little bit more accurate with it, right? Like, you know approximately what this looks like. You don't have to know it perfectly, but like, it's a big difference.
I'll definitely try and work on this today.
It's a big difference to like put it somewhere against this wall and peek out, and it's like at least somewhere in the right position, to like walking out like this and bringing your crosshair around, which you really don't want to be doing. And I can show you exactly what I mean once we finish
Where is she?
going through the VOD.
Watch that.
Finish up this great game.
Yep.
Who wants spike? Who wants spike? Actually, I might peek heaven. Won't use any.
So as we already said, there's kind of no point all of us being here,
Shoot it.
No one shot.
and holding that angle is surprisingly quite intelligent.
Stay down.
Well, it works, I guess.
It worked, but yeah, we shouldn't have had to be doing that.
Shoot these fucking utilities. Like,
It worked out, so can't really complain.
Spike carrier is killed.
So at this point, we're just getting run over.
Stage, my guy. You should watch the area that you can't get shot
If I was looking at the minimap, I would have seen a guy.
Remove.
for shit.
hey, you guys
Okay, that's a complete waste of our dash again. Right. We need to be much more conservative of that. It's really, really important that you use your dash properly.
Why do people's bodies sometimes turn to ice after they die?
Hey, go A, guys. Go A.
Yeah, it's a skin. It's a gun skin.
Well, we're going A.
Alright, so you see there's an opera at B, and I'm like
Play.
piecing out.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is fine.
We're
I'm
actually
going for this
passing at A.
rotation to A is
Great.
good.
We did
Yeah,
it.
this is smart. This is exactly what we want to do, right? And at this point, we now just want to play together. Going up there with your Omen is pretty smart.
Yes, swear to God.
And he's just
So
smoked for them to cover their entrance.
No, I think that smoke there works for Omen actually pretty well because they can't necessarily predict where he's there.
They both there.
It would have been better for him to maybe smoke this so that they can't push out, but it's okay. Going for this peak is
Remaining.
a little risky and probably unnecessary.
I first just on the site.
They both
Yeah.
there.
So we don't really need to peek this, right? We could say stand here and hold this angle, or maybe better than that would be if you stand here. This is what you call an off angle because you're not like hard around a corner. So if you play in this position, you can just hold them as they come out, and it's really difficult because if you're stood here, they have so many other angles that they have to clear, right? They have to look at all of the rest of the
Door here.
site.
You trust
So-
Omen to cover that side?
Well, it doesn't matter. Like, who gives a shit? If he doesn't kill them, then they're gonna come through here. Doesn't matter if he holds it or not, right?
You're saying you ignore this doorway and you just like watch there,
I'm not.
stand there.
Were we on the? Don't know if you're on exactly the same screen as me. There is almost. So. Okay.
Oh,
Is the
never
omen?
mind.
Is the omen here on
resolution
your
is probably
screen?
off or something. No, that's a wall.
Okay. Press the sync button.
Pressing it, but it doesn't seem to help. Anyway, I think I get what you're talking about. I should hold the off angle there.
Okay. Yeah, I it's difficult because if you can't see exactly what I'm seeing, then that's really not great.
They both there.
But I will send you a recording of this session, so you can always watch it back, and then you might realize that it sounded like I was saying complete weird shit that was actually much clearer on my screen.
Fine. Oh my god. Fine.
But what I meant was you can simply hold CT while the Omen's in heaven, right? So he's holding CT, but you just have to hold the entrance to site.
He's
Okay.
defusing.
He's defusing, but it doesn't matter because he doesn't have time. Cool.
Here.
Gun.
Here.
It was pretty close though. Maybe one of us should have stayed behind.
It wasn't that close.
Someone, we all come with
He was quite a long way away from having that work.
Oh fuck me.
So again, we're dashing to try and close the distance, but they've already walked away, right? So we really don't want to use our dash like that.
Oh, not needed.
Sage, you cannot die.
And again, notice that our crosshair placement is a little bit too low.
Healing you.
And it's just kind of a default setting that you want to be on, that you want to be pivoting just left and like you just want to be, you want your crosshair to always be at head height, basically, right? And you're just moving it left and right.
Ooh, that was the wrong time, bro. We should wait for us to plant first.
Fine, we have time to plant now. They're gonna back up. We should push side now.
I have no clue what's going on in this game.
Enemy spotted.
Yeah, your killjoy definitely doesn't.
One down.
But you have spike, so you really need to hurry up and plant it.
Need healing. Need
Come
healing.
plant, come
And like in the default place between the boxes there.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Fine.
But like flopping around in the open is generally not great. You also have 2 smokes, so you probably could have put them down to cover this cross here, so you can get back into where the omen is.
Need healing. Need
Come
healing.
plant.
Why would I go back? Aren't we going forward?
One down.
Sorry,
Why would I go back to the showers? Aren't we pushing forward?
go back to showers. I wasn't in. Okay, yes. So this is what I mean. That I don't think. Let me
Are
just.
we out of
check my-
sync again?
I think we're completely out of sync. Yeah. Let me just. This will be maybe much clearer. I'm just sharing my screen with you.
Need healing, so
Healing. Enemy spotted. One down.
So what I was indicating was that you could smoke this position here, and you could cross into double boxes.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, I
And then I
think.
plant immediately.
Yeah, and plant as
And I wouldn't have
plant
died
as
to that
quickly
guy
as
who killed
possible.
me.
I need healing, so
Yeah, because you
Would
wouldn't
have
have
been covered
peeked
by the
it.
boxes.
come plant.
Yeah,
One down.
because this guy from here kills you.
Fine.
Okay, so we're dead.
I probably forgot I had the bomb.
Yeah,
I
got-
guessed so. That would yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
That's all yours.
I got Odin.
So we're going 5 people to one part of the map again, which we've already said is not great. You probably don't really want to be the one carrying the spike either as Jet, because you want to be aggressive, you want to be entering, and sometimes obviously your team might just want to go back. So being the
I
one
had to
carrying
grab
the
it from
bomb.
Killjoy because she was not
You guys
planting
push
it.
up, I'll cover
Okay.
you guys.
Sage is probably the one that you want to give it to, though. Okay, and we want to be a
Because
little bit
Sage
more
is also trying not to die so she can heal.
precisely. Yes, exactly. So Sage tends to play a bit more passive.
Go, 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 go. Oh, fuck.
Oh, that's why you don't stack up all in one place.
Yeah,
Right.
that is one of the many reasons not to stack up in one place.
Oh, spawn.
Just ask.
So yeah, we probably shouldn't have done that. I mean, it made your life very, very difficult. And I guess the other thing that I have to point out, like, yeah, okay, we didn't want to stack up with this many people in one place, but also when you peek this, sorry, for this, when you peek this angle, make sure that you check this and you check this and you're already counter strafing, right? Slice the pie. Make sure that you actively check each of these
Two separate
positions.
sections.
Yes. Yes, so I'll check the edge here and then I'll check Ninja. That's what they tend to call this little corner here anyway. Ninja or Cubby, whatever.
Go, 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 go,
Okay,
go.
I've never heard that one in my Bronze League games.
Yeah. And
Come on, I
stacking up
dashed
like
out of
that.
How did that get me?
Hell no.
Whoa, you got blocked when you dashed. That's why.
Just ask. Can I,
It gets
can I
blocked?
get it?
Can we just tell him or let him
Yeah,
win?
if there's a teammate in front of you, then you'll get stopped by them. They're essentially a solid object.
Hey, someone say knives. Question.
So yeah, if you dash into a teammate, you won't go anywhere.
She shuts
If
the
I'm used to
door.
playing Overwatch where Genji just goes through anything.
Yeah.
She's sours, careful.
Oh no, he doesn't go through teammates. If you dash at a teammate as Genji, you also don't go through them.
Really, I don't really play Overwatch.
I'm reporting Killjoy.
I like shooting
Wait,
shields all
What the fuck are
around.
you doing? Oh, what the?
Yeah, these guys are like losing their mind.
Killjoy, I thought kill.
Oh yeah, turn the comms off. It's pretty toxic.
Yeah, it is hugely toxic. Okay, so only thing that we can really take away from this is that our crosshair is still too low, right?
Should I be like peeking these faster?
And you should probably be peeking them faster, yeah. And yeah, you see how you have to, then when you see him, you have to adjust your crosshair up. You don't want to have to do that, right? As you peek this
Yeah,
omen,
that seems a bit low.
you see, and you see him, and then you adjust up, which is, it's nice that you are aiming for the head when you're shooting. That was actually really nice.
Skill.
But unfortunately, you're not going to win it. Oh, holy shit, dude. You really do almost win this. I have to say that peeking it like this is probably not the smartest thing in the world.
What should I have done?
You don't really have many great options because he knows where you are. But going back and getting the bomb is probably the smartest play because it's 1v1 and you can take the bomb to the other site. And I get, actually, the reason that you lose this is because your spray control isn't as good as it could be, right? So at this point, half your spray goes over his head, right? And I think if any one of those bullets had gone in his head, you would have killed him there.
Yeah, I'll work on that a bit. I'm just usually just try to fire the short burst, but then when I actually need the spray control, it's not there.
Yeah. Okay, so now the most important thing, as you've kind of already realized yourself, I guess, is that we have objectives, we have clear goals on what we're going to do moving forwards. So at the end of every session I do, I always like to summarize kind of like key points that we talked about, so that you have a clear set of goals on what you need to work on moving forwards. So what would you say is probably the most important thing that we've talked about so far? I guess there's a few general points, but I'm going to write them down and put them in our chat.
Anything else?
Sorry?
Anything else I should add?
You cut out if you said anything, sorry.
Anything else besides these 4 points?
Oh. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna write them down just because I guess I have my own specific way of writing it. But yeah, so looking for information as a defender for sure. Yeah. So look for information as a defender. I completely agree with you. I'm just gonna write them down, go through them as well for my own sake, and then just in case I think of anything else. So looking for information as a defender for sure. Jet stash is an escape, absolutely. So use jet stash as an escape, not an engage. Right, I think that's the key. Because you really don't want to be using it to try and get closer to enemies. Peeking properly, always slicing the pie. Yep. So slice the pie when peeking, absolutely. Jiggle, yeah, so that's kind of jiggle. The jiggle peeking each angle is essentially what slicing the pie is, so I guess that's just for your own sake. Practice your spray control, definitely. Other things we talked about, avoid stacking up in one place on the map, right? On attack. Avoid stacking one position. I'm writing them down, so don't worry about it. I'm gonna write these down and then I'll DM it to you.
All right.
Avoid stacking one position on attack. Definitely.
Or anytime, really.
Yeah, I guess so. Or any time. But like specifically on attack was when we noticed it being like a real issue, right?
That's when it gets really comical, like all 5 people peeking the same angle at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Using our smokes to avoid being crossfired was another thing we talked about. So we can deny the sight lines for one person so that 2 people can't shoot you at the same time.
Right, at my level, people mostly just drop them down where they want to go, and then they just slowly walk out of it.
Yeah, which is, you don't want to do that, right? Because you just want to kill one of the guys, right? Like, ultimately, if you don't kill them, if you just walk out your smokes, they're still going to be holding the smokes, right? It doesn't stop them holding the smokes. You still should be walking into a crossfire. I guess, like, some of the stuff that we talked about is, like, jet specific, so I guess bear that in mind.
Yeah, I'm not really going to be a jet main for life.
Yeah, so if you're going to play another character, I guess we can make the general point of understand what your role is in the team, right? So Jet is there to get kills, right? Like, she is an entry. Her job is to get that kill to get you onto a site, right? So you should be aggressive. You should be actively looking to take fights with people. It would be different if you were, say, playing Sage, right? Or Omen, where your job is different, right? So I guess evaluate the abilities that you have and try and understand, like, what is your role within the team playing that agent, right? So understand your agent's role within the team. And we kind of talked about like jet specific stuff for this, right? Like, you want to be entering, you want to be peeking wide with your AWP on defense to try and get a kill, right?
I guess it's the same with like Phoenix, except you have those flashbang grenades.
Exactly. Yes, it is exactly the same with Phoenix. He is precisely the same idea. But like, if you're playing someone with smokes, you might not be playing so aggressively because you need those smokes later into the round, right? And you're more of a facilitator, right? Your job is more to like smoke off positions and say, okay, guys, push, and then you'll throw a flash for them, as Omen, for instance. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? I think that's pretty much it. Any last points that you want to add that we haven't covered?
I think that's enough to work on for 1 week.
Cool.